Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Greetings, and welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, a locally sourced podcast dedicated to covering events all across the Peak to Peak area. I'm Jamie Lammers, and today we'll be bringing you the hosts of local podcast Pickled Watermelon Rinds, who sponsored the 2024 Pet of the Year contest for the Mountaineer. You can check them out on Facebook and Instagram and listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, I will leave a link to the RSS feed in the podcast episode description down below. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello there, everybody. My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's miscellaneous episode of the Mountaineer Podcast, which is absolutely not on a Monday. I am so sorry. This is absolutely the latest I have ever gotten a podcast episode out from the time that I initially announced it would be out. I said this episode would be out on Monday, and it's now over midway through the week, so I am very sorry that it's out this late. I will admit I have had a habit of uploading later than I say I'm going to, but this is especially late. So, this kind of lateness will not happen again. I'm going to make sure that our regular Music of the Mountains segment will be out as regularly scheduled on Friday. For now, though, it's time for the episode of the Mountaineer Podcast that I mentioned I was going to bring you. A community-centered episode of the podcast. I haven't been able to do one of these in such a long time, and I am so excited to bring other members of the community outside of the music world back into the podcast. We've got some amazing guests on today, but before we get into that interview, a couple things. First off, if you haven't subscribed to The Mountaineer and you're looking for something new to subscribe to in 2025, we would highly recommend you support us to give some support for local journalism. Be sure to head to our website at themtnear.com to browse free articles at your leisure, but also to subscribe to The Mountaineer to peruse our full digital archive as well as scanned copies of the physical newspaper and potentially receive a physical newspaper in your mailbox or send it to someone you love. And by the way, if you tune in to the very end of this episode, we have a very special discount for you, meant especially for Mountaineer podcast listeners. Second, I know it's basically the weekend at this point in time, but in case you wanted to go to the Backdoor Theater this weekend to have a great time at the movies, I still wanted to let you know what the movie was this weekend, and that movie is A Complete Unknown, rated R. Here's the logline brought to you by the Backdoor Theater. In 1961, an unknown 19-year-old Bob Dylan arrives in New York City with his guitar and forges relationships with music icons on his meteoric rise, culminating in a groundbreaking performance that reverberates worldwide. If you want to see this film based on Bob Dylan's life, which has just been nominated for a few Golden Globe Awards, then be sure to head over to the Backdoor Theater, located in the Nederland Community Center at 750 North Highway 72 in Nederland, on Friday, January 10th, starting at 7 p.m., on Saturday, January 11th, starting at 2 p.m. with an open caption matinee, and again on Saturday, January 11th, starting at 7 p.m. And finally, before we get into our interview, here's a quick message brought to you by the Mountaineer.
Are you interested in advertising? The Mountaineer has advertising in print, on our website, through our social media. We have 3 guides each year, coupon insertions, and more. Want more information? Email marketing@themountaineer.com or give Bethany a call at 720-960-2900.
Actually, I do have one more thing, and it ties directly into our guests for this episode. It's been almost a month since the 2024 Pet of the Year winners were announced both in the physical and digital editions of the Mountaineer, so I wanted to shout out the 5 winners here. Voted for specifically by all of you Mountaineer supporters and community members, the top 5 pets this year are, in 5th place, Diesel Dan. In 4th place, Jasmine. In 3rd place, Bubba Ganoush. In 2nd place, Thor. And in 1st place, Willie Gromit. I will link to the digital edition of the Pet of the Year winner pictures down below in the podcast episode description. So why am I announcing the Pet of the Year winners in particular? Well, throughout the early quarter of this year, 2025, I'm going to be interviewing the sponsors of the 2024 Pet of the Year contest. And hopefully, this is a great way to support community businesses as a whole, as well as shout out their support for the Pet of the Year contest. So, our first sponsors for the 2024 Pet of the Year contest. Do you mind introducing yourselves real quick?
Well, hello. This is Auntie from Pickled Watermelon Rinds.
And Auntie Joan from Pickled Watermelon Rinds. And we do the podcast.
Well, funnily enough, this is the first time I have ever promoted another podcast on the Mountaineer podcast. So how long has Pickled Watermelon Rinds been going?
We have just recorded our 44th episode, so about 44 weeks in, so just shy of a year. And we've been doing this podcast from our individual homes and doing that over Zoom and having wonderful conversations.
Yeah, she said.
And as one of your most recent efforts as Pickled Watermelon Rinds, you sponsored the 2024 Pet of the Year contest from the Mountaineer.
Yay!
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We talk about Boulder County and the Peak-to-Peak area quite a bit, as Auntie Joan lives down in the Boulder area, and I live just south of Nederland, and I lived in Nederland for a while as well, so we talk about the Peak-to-Peak region quite a bit, so we wanted to give back to the community that we talk so much about.
That is awesome. So how did Pickled Watermelon Rinds as a podcast begin?
Well, there was a family gathering. Was it Memorial Day 2023, I believe? And
yes.
We were all sitting around the table, and I asked, did anybody's mother make pickled watermelon rinds? Because my mom used to make them. I grew up in the Midwest, in Wisconsin and Illinois. And my mom was of the generation where you throw nothing away. So, after having the watermelon fruit, she would take the rinds and pickle them, and we'd have watermelon rind pickles for the winter. So we were talking about it, and somebody said, I'm not sure who it was, that would be a great name for a podcast. So that kind of started the wheels rolling, and, Auntie decided maybe this is something we ought to look into. So we did, and, she started with most of it. She got a lot of the stuff going, like the microphones and the software and all that stuff. I call myself the talent. So, yeah, Auntie Joan's the talent, and Auntie's the specialist.
So it sounds like you two have been connected even before Pickled Watermelon Rinds got off the ground. Do you two mind talking about how you knew each other beforehand, how you were connected beforehand?
Oh, sure. So I have a good friend, and it happens to be Auntie Joan's cousin. So we met mutually through her, and I've been into many of their family kind of adopted me many years ago. I'm originally from Connecticut, so I don't have any actual family out here in Colorado. So my friend, who we call Auntie Mary, she introduced me to Auntie Joan at the family gatherings. We built our own friendship over the years, and we both were retired, so we decided that we kind of wanted to learn something new and do something different, and we talked about putting a podcast together. And then through that Memorial Day party, Pickled Watermelon Rinds was kind of born.
And we wanted the podcast to reflect, our audience is more women of a particular age, 50s and up. And we thought there was kind of a lack of podcasting for people of our generation. And I thought, we both thought that we need to be heard and what we're thinking about what's going on. So that's our main focus, is to share retired people's opinions, their thoughts, what they're doing, and keep away from what the traditional young podcasters are doing, like makeup and fashion and all that stuff. So we're more down to earth, and dating isn't our thing either, so that's our focus for the older folks. Yeah.
And we span a couple of generations. So Auntie Joan is from the boomer generation, and I'm from the Gen X generation. So our target demographic is anywhere in between.
Very good.
And since the audience for Pickled Watermelon Rinds is primarily the retired community in this particular area of Colorado, I'm curious if you've been in any communication with other organizations in the area that host similar kinds of outreach.
We have not done a lot of investigation into other groups. I did attend a women's group down in Golden just before the holidays that I'll continue to go back to. It's a weekly group that meets at Tengu Martial Arts Center on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. And it's for like-minded businesswomen who want to get together. It's a free gathering. But as far as going to the groups more in our demographic in the peak area, we have not done that yet, but that's a great thing for us to consider for the new year that we're embarking upon now.
So what inspired your decision to sponsor the 2024 Pet of the Year contest from the Mountaineer?
So I lived in Nederland for 13 years and then moved south of Nederland 4 years ago. So I've been up in the Peak to Peak region about 17 years. And in my home, I was a subscriber for the Mountaineer as well. So I'm on the Facebook groups up there. So the post came through regarding the Pet of the Year contest and, reached out to Auntie Joan to see if that's something that we wanted to get involved with. And she was all for it. So we reached out to Barbara and got the ball rolling. And like I said, we just want to give back to the community that we talk about so often on the podcast.
And I'm assuming that you sponsoring the Pet of the Year contest is your first major foray into sponsoring events like this as Pickled Watermelon Rinds.
Correct.
Indeed.
I didn't ask this question as well as I'd hoped to during the actual interview, but thankfully our two guests understood what I was asking, so I'll just ask it better for the interludes now. What's it been like for you two embracing a podcast in your professional and personal lives? How have you integrated Pickled Watermelon Rinds as a whole and the routine that surrounds creating this podcast into your personal and professional lives over the last 44 weeks?
We're revisiting the format. What we usually include are a movie review or a TV show review, and also commercials and how they either rope us in or annoy us. And we're thinking about not doing the commercials anymore and maybe focusing on something else. And then we, of course, include what's been going on locally and in our lives and stuff like that.
So I'm curious, what's it been like for you two creating, hosting, editing, and releasing this podcast as well as promoting it and spreading the word about it?
Auntie Joan, you want to take that?
Well, I have done like Photoshop and desktop publishing and things like that in the past. So I do the little...
He's our creative guru.
Yeah, I do the artwork that goes on the ads and that goes with the links. Anytime you see a thing about pickled watermelon rinds with images on it, that's what I do. And that keeps me going. I've done a little with AI also. And I mean, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps the old brain going, which is wonderful for me. And it's stuff I'd really like to do too. And then Auntie has her own things. She's keeping up with the software. And so that really keeps us, on trend with what's happening.
Yeah, so I do all of the editing of the episodes and merging of the audio files and all the postings to the social media, and RSS is the software that we're using to house all of our episodes, and they're the ones that push it out to all of the platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon Music and all the top ones. And they also have a link to YouTube, so we're also audio on YouTube as well. So it was quite a bit of a learning curve. I had not had the background in audio in any way, shape, or form, so everything I'm doing is relatively new to me. I've definitely been working with software throughout my career, but I have not ever done anything audio specific before. So it's been fun to learn these things. It is a lot of work for both of us.
Yeah.
Like I said, we do it all ourselves. We don't hire anything out. Hopefully we'll get to a point down the road where we can indulge in something like that. But for now, we're going to keep it in-house and kind of steer our own ship.
Well said.
What's it been like embracing this podcast completely for you? Especially since a lot of the technology that exists now and a lot of the ways that podcasts are promoted and made now didn't exist before I was born. And while I've grown up around that technological environment, not everyone has.
Well, I mean, this is Auntie Joan, and I'm in my 70s, but I worked for a large technical company for most of my career, and I worked as a computer operator, and that's where I learned the desktop publishing and the graphics. So that aspect of it wasn't that difficult for me. I think Auntie's the one that had the bigger transition with all the audio, and because Auntie, you do most of the podcast scheduling and all that stuff, so that's pretty intensive. And Jamie, you probably know too. I mean, you do your own podcast, so you know what's involved. So, but then, yeah, like you said, I guess it's not quite a leap for you being so young.
I appreciate that, but I also want to clarify here that I do not necessarily believe it is an age factor. Yes, of course, I've grown up with the technological explosion that I'm now surrounded with, but I think anybody can embrace and learn more about this technology. It's just that 50 years ago, a lot of this stuff didn't even exist. And even within the last 5-10 years, so much about technology, the way we use it, and the way we promote content in general has changed so much.
Well, every couple months, there's a new release of this, and there's always change, and it's coming quicker and quicker, isn't it?
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I think YouTube has been a tremendous help to us as far as guidance on. People have a lot of tutorials out there. I can't say enough about YouTube. I think in our first or second episode, we actually named everybody that we leveraged their information, whether it was the equipment itself or the software tools to use. It's just been incredible. And honestly, I think that almost was played to our advantage because we didn't have, at least from the podcast specific side, we didn't have any tools that we came in like, we're going to use this because this is what we know. It was, okay, what are people using out there? What is, cost effective, which basically for us means free. We're using a lot of freeware. We're using OSB Studios. We're leveraging Audacity for editing. OSB Studios we're using for recording, and Audacity we're using for the editing portion of it. We're leveraging Canva for portions of the creative side that Auntie Joan works on, as well as Photoshop. And there's another tool that I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if you know the name of it, Joan.
D-ID?
D-ID for the talking avatars that Auntie Joan puts together. So it was almost kind of better coming in fresh without preconceived notions as to this is what we're going to use. It was, okay, what are people using out there? Let's do some YouTube research and take some tutorials and see. And Kevin Stratvert has been our guru as far as getting us through the software tools. He has his own Instagram page and YouTube channel and all that wonderful stuff. He does quite a few tutorials on technology platforms, so he was pivotal in some of our choices.
He does excellent tutorials, too.
For sure.
And I must say, as someone who just turned 23, I agree with both of your statements earlier that there are a lot of podcasts out there that just seem to follow the current trends of what's going on right now, and it gets tiring after a while. What I like about what you guys are doing with Pickled Watermelon Rinds is that you are bringing people who are not normally a part of the podcast community, who have not been involved as much in the podcast community because the podcast community has exploded a lot more over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And you're bringing those voices to a down-to-earth, personal podcast that allows you guys to share your perspectives, allows a niche to be filled in the podcast community, and that feels completely genuine.
Yeah,
right.
And
right. They probably make a whole lot more money than we do, but that's okay.
So to ask the general question that I've ended up asking pretty much every single person I've interviewed over the course of the last couple of years, what do you hope people take away from Pickled Watermelon Rinds? What the podcast has to offer to the community, and what you hope people will embrace listening to this podcast?
Well, I would hope that people, in our generations realize that they have something to say, and they have stories to tell and opinions to share, and why not do it?
Right, and that really, retirement doesn't have to mean that you stop doing anything creative or stop doing anything that engages your mind. You can still do things like this. Like, we're really not in it for the money, though it would be nice if we ever got any, but that's not our goal. It's really mostly to learn new technologies, learn new things, share our opinions, and hope people enjoy or are entertained by what we have to say. And maybe take our advice on movies and steer clear of some of the commercials we've been talking about recently.
And we learn stuff, too. I mean,
absolutely.
Like when we come up with a topic to discuss, we have to do some research on it. And I've usually learned something. something along the way.
For sure. And, we're both big advocates of giving back to community. So what we can do to help our community along the way is certainly something that we're very interested in. So I think that's just yet another aspect. Our first foray was the Pet of the Year contest, but I foresee we'll be doing quite a bit more of that as the year moves on.
Yeah, we're both animal lovers.
For sure.
And it really does sound like, along with providing a really special niche for the local community, but also for the podcast community across the entire world, you guys have also just embraced this podcast just to have fun and learn new things.
We always said if it starts feeling like a job, we're done.
Oh,
we don't want to.
That reminds me, we need to talk. Just kidding.
I know.
It's fun. And I've gotten to know Auntie a whole lot more than I did before. So she gets me out, too, more than I usually would do.
Yes. We like to take little field trips, and then we talk about those as well. Like we've gone to play bingo up in Longmont at the bingo hall there. We've actually gone to movie theaters to watch the movies together. But I do have to say the bulk of our reviews are on things that we watch in our individual homes. But we do sometimes get out to an actual movie theater. And then we talk about not only the movie, but we talk about the theater experience. And like we just went to the Alamo Draft House down in Westminster and, how they serve food and they have a bar there and things like that. Just to get the word out about local businesses, whether it's local to Colorado or even up in the hill. I just talked about Howlin' Wind Brewery and their bingo, the holiday bingo that they hosted like a week or two ago that I went to with other friends. And so we always try to, whatever establishments we go to, we give them a shout out on the podcast if we bring them up.
Well, I know it hasn't been quite a year yet, but are there any plans that Pickled Watermelon Rinds is formulating over the next couple of weeks, particularly for the year anniversary of the podcast?
It'll probably be a happy hour recording.
Yes, which means I've been drinking and you never know what's going to come out of my mouth. So there's that.
Yes, she does loosen up a bit.
I do. Yeah, so we'll probably do a happy hour, make a big to-do out of the year anniversary, and we'll probably start talking about how we want to evolve the podcast starting in the second season. Our second season will really start with episode 53. So we're having those discussions now, and we'll release that information on our anniversary special so folks know to get excited for in the upcoming new season.
Is there anyone else you want to shout out?
Well, I do want to thank the Mountaineer for even sponsoring the Pet of the Year contest. I think it's a great thing. I've been watching it all the years that I've lived up in the hills, and we were really excited to be part of it this year and hope to continue that in this new year as well, and wish you all the best because you guys provide such a service to the community and getting the news out there, and it's really important to have that local newspaper, and I'm really appreciative of it.
We really appreciate it. Is there anything else in general either of you two want to add?
Oh, no, I think I've kind of covered everything from my end.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for the interview.
Yes, we really appreciate your time.
And thank you to both of you guys for coming on board and joining us for this podcast interview about your own podcast.
Our pleasure. Yeah, nice chatting with you, Jamie.
We really appreciate Ontie and Auntie Joan for coming on board and joining us for this first community episode of the Mountaineer Podcast for 2025. Since I've never promoted a podcast on the Mountaineer Podcast before, I wanted to do something really special and give you a taste of what you can find on the Pickled Watermelon Rinds podcast. So, here is a clip that Auntie Joan and Ontie sent me from Season 1, Episode 33, Double Double, Toil and Trouble.
What was our task, Auntie Joan?
Our task du jour, making, are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. Pickled watermelon rinds.
Why, we did!
Yes, we did. I unfortunately bought the tail end of the watermelons I could find, which had thinner rinds, but I peeled them and cut them and soaked them overnight for 24 hours and hauled them up to Auntie's house. And from there, it was like we were pretty pathetic trying to figure out what to do, I must say.
Neither one of us is good at reading directions. and retaining them. Because we both kept reading the same thing over and over again. We both kept walking away with two different opinions as to what we needed to do. And then, it was very silly. Like we're reading comprehension is not our strong suit.
If you enjoyed what you listened to in that particular clip and you want to hear more from these two hosts, then be sure to check out Pickled Watermelon Rinds on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, I will leave a link in the podcast episode description to the RSS feed where you can listen to every episode so far. Thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in to this week's miscellaneous episode of the Mountaineer Podcast, and for bearing with me that this episode is unbelievably late. I really want to try and embrace a better schedule for 2025 as a whole. So, I am hoping to get the Music of the Mountains episode out as regularly scheduled tomorrow, Friday, January 10th. If it's not out by then, it's once again a little bit late. I'm going to keep working on not getting it out late. The episodes will be out though, and I am very excited for what 2025 and Season 5 of the Mountaineer Podcast has to offer. If you want to keep up with the Mountaineer Podcast, or you want to send this episode or others to whoever you see fit, then be sure to head to our website at the mtnear.com and scroll near to the bottom, or head to our podcast's main hub at the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com to check out a full archive of our entire podcast. If you have a connection to the Peak to Peak area in any way, shape, or form, if you want to contribute your voice to the podcast in any way, or you have advertising that you want us to put on the podcast, whatever your connection is to the Peak to Peak area, let me know if you want to be on the podcast by emailing me at media@themountaineer.com, and we'll get something sorted for you. I will see you guys very, very soon with our regularly scheduled Music of the Mountains segment of the Mountaineer Podcast. Have a great rest of your day! Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mountaineer Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of this story, and we hope you keep supporting us for other stories across the Peak to Peak area. Once again, if you want to learn more about Pickled Watermelon Rinds, be sure to head to their Facebook and Instagram and check out all of their episodes on their RSS feed, linked down in the podcast episode description below. Thank you once again to Ontie and Auntie Joan for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. We'll see you next time.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.